Most people picture Silicon Valley's origin story starting in a dusty garage. They imagine two friends with a brilliant idea toiling away with soldering irons and spare parts. This image is powerful. It's a modern-day creation myth, a story of humble beginnings leading to world-changing technology. We love the tale of Hewlett and Packard in their Palo Alto garage, or the later saga of Jobs and Wozniak building the first Apple computers. It suggests that anyone with enough grit and a good idea can change the world from the ground up. This narrative is not entirely false, but it is a dangerously incomplete picture, one that obscures a much more complex and fascinating truth about where Silicon Valley truly came from. The reality is that the garage was merely the final stage of a much larger, well-funded, and decades-long project. This foundation was built not by scrappy entrepreneurs, but by the United States government, its military, and a visionary university. The seeds of the digital revolution were not sown in the pursuit of consumer gadgets. They were planted in the fertile ground of Cold War paranoia, military necessity, and immense federal investment. Before the silicon chips and server farms, the region south of the San Francisco Bay had a different name. It was known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. This was a place of stunning natural beauty, an agricultural paradise blanketed with miles of apricot, cherry, and prune orchards. In the spring, the valley floor was a sea of white and pink blossoms. There were also early radio and communications pioneers, people like Lee DeForest, who invented the Audion vacuum tube, and Cyril Elwell, who founded the Federal Telegraph Company, building massive transmitters that could send Morse code messages across the Pacific. The transformation from the Valley of Heart's Delight to Silicon Valley was not a gentle evolution. It was a radical reinvention. The orchards would eventually be uprooted, replaced by sprawling corporate campuses and office parks. The scent of blossoms would give way to the hum of clean rooms and cooling fans. The quiet agricultural valley provided the blank canvas upon which a new industrial and cultural landscape would be aggressively painted. The primary catalyst for the valley's transformation was not a global conflict. World War II and the subsequent Cold War created an unprecedented demand for advanced electronics. The military needed sophisticated radar navigation systems and surveillance equipment. This was not a matter of market competition, it was a matter of national survival. As a result, the United States government, particularly the Department of Defense, began pouring billions of dollars into electronics research and development. This fire hose of federal funding was aimed directly at companies and universities capable of producing the next generation of military technology. Companies like Hewlett-Packard, which had started in that famous garage, found their most important and lucrative customer was the United States government. They built microwave signal generators and other electronic instruments that were essential for the war effort. Other firms like Varian Associates specialized in developing the klystron tube, a critical component for radar systems. These were not small-scale operations. They were vital parts of the national security apparatus, and their work was often classified. The relationship was symbiotic. The government provided the funding and the clear, high-stakes problems to be solved. In return, the companies in the Santa Clara Valley delivered the technological breakthroughs. The focus was on performance, reliability, and miniaturization qualities essential for military hardware that needed to function flawlessly in planes, submarines, and missile guidance systems. The relentless push for smaller, faster, and more powerful electronics for warfare laid the direct groundwork for the later semiconductor industry. This period established a culture of ambitious, high-risk, and secretive research in the valley. While government money provided the fuel, Stanford University built the engine of innovation. In the post-war era, Stanford was not yet the global powerhouse it is today. A key figure in realizing these ambitions was Frederick Terman, a professor of electrical engineering. Terman had a revolutionary idea. He believed the university should not be an ivory tower, isolated from the world of commerce. Instead, he envisioned a community of technical scholars, where academia and industry worked hand in hand to create new technologies and new companies. Terman actively encouraged his students and faculty to start their own businesses. His most famous early success story was with two of his former students, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. He encouraged them to stay in the area after graduation, helped them secure their first small loans, and connected them with potential customers. To formalize this relationship, Terman spearheaded the creation of the Stanford Industrial Park in 1951. This was a groundbreaking concept. The university leased plots of its vast land holdings exclusively to high-tech companies. This brought industry right to the university's doorstep. creating an unprecedented physical proximity between academic researchers and corporate engineers. Companies like Varian Associates, Hewlett-Packard, and later Lockheed set up facilities in the park. This allowed for a seamless flow of ideas, talent, and resources. Professors consulted for the companies, and company employees took classes at Stanford, creating a vibrant, dynamic intellectual ecosystem. The Stanford Industrial Park became the geographical heart of the emerging Silicon Valley. This model was wildly successful and became the blueprint for research parks around the world. No single individual did more to architect the rise of Silicon Valley than Frederick Terman. While he may not be a household name like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, his influence was arguably more foundational. Terman was not an inventor of a world-changing product, but an inventor of a world-changing system. As a professor and later dean of engineering and provost at Stanford, he possessed a clear and powerful vision. He saw the potential for a new kind of synergy between academia, private industry, and government funding, and he worked tirelessly for decades to build the infrastructure that would make that vision a reality. His quiet, strategic efforts earned him the well-deserved title of the Father of Silicon Valley. Terman's strategy was multifaceted and brilliantly executed. He understood that to attract top-tier talent to Stanford, which was then a far cry from its East Coast Ivy League rivals, he needed a compelling draw. That draw was the promise of opportunity. He systematically recruited the best scientists and engineers, often luring them with the prospect of working on lucrative government contracts. He transformed Stanford's engineering school into a hub for electronics research. His mentorship of William Hewlett and David Packard is the most celebrated example of his hands-on approach. He didn't just teach them, he guided them. He advised them against taking jobs on the East Coast, insisting that they could build their own company right there in Palo Alto. He helped them find their first small bits of funding and offered continuous technical and business advice. This was his model in miniature: identify brilliant talent, convince them to stay, and provide them with the university's resources. He replicated this process over and over, seeding the valley with a generation of engineer entrepreneurs. Ultimately, Terman's legacy is the ecosystem itself. He was the master connector, the weaver who interlaced the threads of government, university, and industry into a single durable fabric. The transition from vacuum tubes and military hardware to the silicon-based electronics we know today was ignited by one brilliant, difficult, and ultimately tragic figure, William Shockley. As a co-inventor of the transistor at Bell Labs, Shockley was a titan of physics, a Nobel laureate who decided to move west to commercialize his invention. In 1956, he founded Shockley Semiconductor Laboratory in Mountain View, bringing the magic of the semiconductor to the valley. He recruited the brightest young minds in the country, a dozen brilliant physicists and engineers. This was the moment the silicon was truly put into Silicon Valley. However, Shockley was a notoriously paranoid and abrasive manager. While a genius in the lab, he was a disaster in the boardroom. He was prone to fits of rage, public humiliation of his staff, and bizarre, distrustful behavior, once even demanding his entire team take lie detector tests. His tyrannical management style quickly alienated his star employees. The very talent he had so carefully assembled was beginning to plot an escape. This tension culminated in one of the most pivotal events in Silicon Valley's history. In 1957, a group of 8 of Shockley's most brilliant employees, including Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, decided they could no longer work for him. They went behind his back to secure funding from an East Coast industrialist named Sherman Fairchild. When Shockley found out, he labeled them the Traitorous Eight. This act of corporate rebellion was unprecedented at the time. The Traitorous Eight went on to found Fairchild Semiconductor, a company that would become the wellspring of the entire industry. At Fairchild, they pioneered the planar process for creating transistors and, crucially, developed the first commercially viable integrated circuit, a chip of silicon containing multiple transistors. This was the breakthrough that made modern electronics possible. More importantly, Fairchild Semiconductor became the incubator for dozens of future startups. Its alumni, known as Fairchildren, would go on to found iconic companies like Intel, AMD, and National Semiconductor, spreading the DNA of innovation and entrepreneurial defiance throughout the valley. The founding of Fairchild Semiconductor by the Traitorous Eight did more than just launch a new company. It established a new cultural template for Silicon Valley. It normalized the idea of leaving a large, established company to pursue a riskier, more innovative venture. This act of rebellion, once seen as a betrayal, was recast as a heroic move. It created a powerful narrative that celebrated the ambitious, impatient, and brilliant individuals who refused to be constrained by corporate bureaucracy. These were the troublemakers, the people who saw a better way to do things and were willing to break the rules and burn bridges to make it happen. This culture of spinning off and starting up became the engine of the Valley's explosive growth. The engineering talent at Fairchild was immense, but the company's management, based on the East Coast, often failed to recognize or reward the groundbreaking work being done in California. As a result, frustrated engineers and physicists would leave, often in groups, to start their own companies, funded by a new class of venture capitalists who understood the potential of this model. This process repeated itself over and over. A successful company like Fairchild became a school for entrepreneurs who then left to create the next generation of successful companies. This phenomenon created a dense, interconnected network of people and ideas. Everyone knew everyone else. Engineers who were colleagues one year might be competitors the next, only to become partners in a new venture a few years later. This constant churn created a highly dynamic and competitive environment where information traveled fast and innovation happened at a breakneck pace. The rivalries were intense, but they were also productive. This was not the stable, hierarchical corporate world of the East Coast. It was a chaotic, Darwinian ecosystem. The technological trajectory of Silicon Valley began in the shadows, focused on secret communications and classified military projects. The goal was to create closed, secure systems for a single, powerful customer, the government. However, a remarkable transformation began to occur as the technology matured and its costs plummeted. The integrated circuit, originally developed with an eye toward military applications like the Minuteman missile's guidance computer, became cheap and powerful enough to be used for commercial and eventually consumer purposes. This transition from military to mainstream was accelerated by a new generation of innovators who had a different worldview. People like the members of the Homebrew Computer Club, who started meeting in the mid-1970s, were not interested in secret government contracts. They were tinkerers, hobbyists, and idealists who were captivated by the idea of personal computing. The Silicon Valley of today, with its focus on social media, artificial intelligence, and the global consumer, can feel a world away from its origins in secret military research. Yet, the hidden past of the Valley continues to shape its present in profound ways. The relentless drive for innovation, the obsession with disruption, and the vast concentrations of capital and power are not new phenomena. They are the direct descendants of a system engineered decades ago for a different purpose. The deep ties between Silicon Valley, the federal government, and the military have not disappeared. They have simply evolved. In conclusion, understanding the hidden history of Silicon Valley is crucial to understanding the world it has created. The myth of the garage startup is a comforting but misleading story. The truth is that the Valley was a deliberate state-sponsored creation, born from the anxieties of war and nurtured by a unique partnership between a university, the government, and industry. Its legacy is a double-edged sword, a world of unprecedented connectivity and technological marvels, but also one of immense, often unaccountable corporate and state power. The echoes of those secret beginnings still reverberate today in every device we use and every network we connect to.